Mr. Hayes. Good morning.
Chair, today we continue with evidence about Oxyvision, the non-contact vision-based monitoring system that we started to hear about yesterday. Its use has proved to be controversial. We will hear a pre-recorded evidence session with Hat Porter, who is a representative of the Stop Oxyvision campaign. That will take the form of 2 videos. These will cover key concerns about the operation of Oxyvision, such as the invasion of patients' privacy and the impact of the technology on patients' health and recovery. We will then hear from Zephan Trent, the Executive Director of Strategy, Transformation and Digital at ePut. He will give evidence about the use of the technology from ePut's perspective. Whilst this evidence is about the operation of a vision-based patient monitoring system, it will inevitably touch on troubling matters, particularly where it deals with concerns that have been raised about the way it operates. For example, there will be references to inquests in which those who died were in rooms where Oxyvision was deployed. People attending today or watching remotely may find some of the matters we will hear about distressing. The inquiry would like to make clear that emotional support is available for all who need it. We have 2 support staff from Hestia, an experienced provider of emotional support here today and for each day of this hearing. They are wearing orange lanyards and scarves. There is a private room downstairs available to talk to Hestia support staff if anybody requires emotional support throughout this hearing. For those watching online, information about available emotional support can be found on the Lampard Inquiry website at www.lampardinquiry.org.uk and under the support tab near the top right-hand corner. We want all those engaging with the inquiry to feel safe and supported. We will now play the first video of Hat Porter's evidence.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Thank you.
Hi.
Could we have the oath, please?
You can remain seated. I present you affirming. I say my whole name. No, I know. Okay. I, Hat Porter, do solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I only have the truth as far as I know. I don't know everything. But what I say will be what I know. It will be true to what I know.
So before I ask Ms. Troop to take you through your evidence, I want to say a few words. You've attended today to provide evidence on behalf of the organisation Stop Oxyvision, and I'm grateful to you for attending and for sharing your evidence. The inquiry is receiving your evidence live in a private hearing. It's the intention of the inquiry that the witness statement which you have provided to the inquiry, together with a recording of your oral evidence today, will be made public in due course once the inquiry deals with the evidence of Oxyvision at a later date. I want to stress that your evidence is of no less importance because it's given in this private format. May I, though, remind everybody in this room that there is a restriction order in place which requires this evidence to be private until that later date. As I believe has been explained to you by my team, there may be instances where the inquiry may need to redact areas of your evidence. These include any restriction order which may be in place, or under the inquiry's privacy information notice. Where that does occur, these will be to the minimum as is required, and my team will liaise with you and your legal team. And now I look forward to hearing your evidence.
Thank you for confirming that.
That's true.
Thank you. I'm going to start by asking you, please, to state your full name for the record.
Yes, my name is Hat Porter.
And I understand that throughout your evidence today, you would like to be addressed as Hat, is that right?
Yes, please.
And that your pronouns are they, them?
Yes, please.
Good. Now, Hat, you are giving evidence today on behalf of Stop Oxyvision, which is a national campaign, as we understand it, made up of a network of both current and former NHS inpatients who volunteer their time towards that campaign. I'm going to summarise what I understand to be the main aims of that campaign. You must stop me and correct me if I give that summary badly or I miss something important out.
Okay.
And we'll come on to more details about the campaign, but for now, for an overview for those watching, is this right? One of the principal aims is to raise awareness of the harms that can be caused by the use of Oxyvision technology in mental health inpatient wards. Is that right?
Yeah, I can expand a little on that, but perhaps we'll wait until you've kind of gone through the other things as well, and I can just give a little...
Absolutely. This is a short introductory summary so that those watching have an idea what the campaign is and what you're about.
Yeah.
The campaign calls in particular for greater oversight of the use of Oxyvision and similar technologies in inpatient facilities. And my understanding is that as part of that, the campaign works to collect and collate first-hand accounts from inpatients as to the use of that technology and the impact of it.
Yes.
Is that a fair summary?
Yes, so that's a fair summary. So I would just add a couple of points. So we've kind of named the campaign group Stop Oxyvision, but we do kind of have more broad concerns around other kind of surveillance devices and systems used in hospitals as well. So that includes CCTV cameras, that includes body-worn cameras. There are also other systems. There's one that's called Care Protect, and kind of various others.
What's that other one called?
It's called Care Protect, and it was previously used by the Priory, but we've found it very difficult to kind of get so much more information about it. So in that sense, we've kind of named it Stop Oxyvision because, not wishing to be marketing for them, but they're kind of the the most prevalent
The
one
principle,
across.
yes.
Yeah, but our concerns are kind of broader than that. But
Yes.
one of the other things that I would say is that whilst we focus on Oxyvision, we do feel that this is it's not a kind of like isolated example, and our concerns kind of extend to more broadly how new kind of technologies and innovations and things are kind of rolled out without due scrutiny, consideration of the legality, without evidence.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Can I ask you, Hat, I'm sorry, to move the microphone a little bit closer towards you? Or
Which
maybe,
one?
Either, I think. Just because I understand being advised that it's coming up a little bit quietly.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
Sorry, I move around a little bit, so if I move away, I can come back.
That's no problem. I'll remind you if you're coming away from it.
Okay.
That's really helpful, thank you. Just to set matters in context now, in terms of today's evidence, by way of background, as part of its work, the inquiry sent to Stop Oxyvision a Rule 9 request under the inquiry rules, and you provided a witness statement in response to that request.
We did, yeah.
For those that may be following, the witness statement you provided is at page 1339 of the core bundle that's been disclosed. It's 31 pages long, and I think I see that you have a copy of this in front of you.
Yes.
Good. If we can have a look at page 31, that's the very end of the statement, we can see that the statement is dated the 24th of March of 2025. Yes?
Yeah, I've got the unsigned version printed, but yes, I think so.
Yes. So the version that you have and that I have and that all those to whom it's been disclosed will have, in fact has your name blanked out, and that is because at the time that this witness statement was disclosed, there was a restriction order in place in respect of your name which has now been lifted.
Yes.
So in those slightly odd circumstances, can you, an obvious question, but can you confirm that this is your witness statement and was signed by you?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you questions about your witness statement and we'll go through it, but I'm not going to take you through it line by line.
Yeah,
because it stands as your evidence to this inquiry already.
That's fine.
And last, by way of background, to make absolutely clear, as the Chair has already explained, your evidence is being recorded today, on Wednesday the 14th of May, following the receipt by the inquiry last Friday, so Friday the 8th of May, of a second witness statement from EPUT in relation to the use of Oxyvision technology that neither you nor your legal representatives have had time to consider in full. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I spent the whole weekend going through it, but I've not had enough time, but yes.
I understand, and for that reason, your evidence today will focus on your witness statement that was made on the 24th of March, and principally, Hat, on the concerns that you have raised on behalf of the campaign in relation to the use of Oxyvision and other vision-based monitoring systems, as you've already explained.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do, please, is take you first to paragraph 1.4 of your witness statement, which is at the bottom of the first page. And to set your evidence in context, I want to take you through what you've said here about what Oxyvision is. So if we look at the second line, halfway through the second line, you say there, Oxyvision is a vision-based patient monitoring system which requires infrared sensitive cameras to be installed in inpatient bedrooms on mental health wards. These cameras constantly record footage of patients in their bedrooms, and the system enables staff to remotely view patients in their bedroom at any time via a tablet or screen located on the ward. Yes?
Yes, that is correct. So it has kind of a few different functions in that it is a video camera and allows kind of footage of patients in their bedrooms or within seclusion rooms to be recorded.
Yes.
It does also take pulse and breathing rate measurements.
Yes, thank you. And you've set that out very helpfully at paragraph 1.5 on page 2 of your statement. You explain there that the technology measures pulse and breathing rates. But you also explain, and this is important, I think, to set it in context, what the technology doesn't do, what it can't do.
Yeah.
So you help us to understand there that it can only give, you say, medically reliable results when staff do a manual spot check, when the person is lying still, with sufficient exposed skin for that to occur.
Yes.
And if there is only one person in the room.
Yes.
So if there's more than one person in the room, the system can't take those vitals. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. And I would also just add something that we haven't put in our statement, but that is in some of the other witness statements, is just to emphasise that it only gives a reading of pulse between 50 to 130 beats per minute, which if somebody's pulse was lower or higher than that, as far as I know, it wouldn't give a reading at all.
I understand. So as far as you're aware, it can only give a reading within that range.
Yeah.
That's helpful, thank you. In terms of the operation of the system, again, you've summarised it very helpfully for us at paragraph 1.6, which is at the bottom of the page, where you tell us this. Depending on which alerts are enabled on the system, staff can receive notifications if the patient is in the bathroom, out of the room, at the door, on the edge of their bed, out of bed, or if another person enters the room. You also explain there that data that is collected can be then pulled into a graph to measure activity and make comparisons. For example, and the example you give is how long someone is spending in the bathroom, because obviously the technology doesn't operate in the bathroom, right?
Yeah, so that's correct. So the it kind of generates these like activity reports which sort of show the like frequency that somebody, like the number of times someone goes to the bathroom.
Yes.
And also kind of the duration of time spent in there, which is quite a personal thing.
Yes.
And also the kind of periods of sleep someone has.
Periods of activity or inactivity and so on.
Yeah, I think like the kind of time someone's
Yes.
asleep.
You also explain here, which I think is important to understand, that the way in which the alerts are set up can be customised by the particular trust that is using them. So different types of alerts can be used or not used, essentially. Is that right?
Yes. So I think within some of the older adult wards, I think some of those systems have an additional function which alerts to if the person is at the edge of the bed.
Yes.
And as far as I'm aware, these kind of alerts aren't activated for all wards. That would just be for some specific wards.
Is your understanding, in the example you've given in relation to older adult wards, that that alert might be set as some sort of preventative measure in relation to falls?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware.
Yes.
Obviously, that does rely on staff then kind of responding.
Acting on, yes.
I would just also mention that there are quite a number of different technologies and products which can assist in management of fall risks. So, for example, you can have a bed sensor mat, which would do a kind of equivalent function,
Yes.
obviously without a camera. So, in that sense, we'll come on to this later, but one of the really important principles within the Mental Health Act and within the Mental Capacity Act is kind of the least restrictive option.
Yes.
And so one thing that we've kind of thought through the campaign is that that there are other ways to manage falls risk which might be less intrusive than having a video camera
Yes.
recording somebody.
Yes, that's helpful, thank you.
Yeah.
Going back to paragraph 1.6, you explain at the end that obviously the alerts can be raised, they can be customised, as we've just discussed. And the purpose of those alerts is to bring the attention of staff to potential risk. Mm-hmm. You say at the end, in the last two sentences, when an alert is raised for a room, the tile on the displays turns red and there is a pop-up in an alert box at the side of the screen. An audible message plays repeating OxyHealth alert until the alert is manually reset. So for the benefit of those who are perhaps not familiar with this technology, what you're talking about is what appears on the screen in front of the member of staff, mm-hmm. Yes? And when you say manually reset, just help me, in order for that alert to stop alerting, the member of staff would need to physically do something to turn it off. Is that right?
Yes, to my knowledge. And I might just take a pause here and to explain I was very, very nervous about making the oath because the information and the understanding that we have is so limited because of the lack of transparency from providers, from OxyHealth about exactly how the technology works. So
I see.
It very much feels like we're kind of trying to piece things together to the best of our knowledge. But in many ways what is presented feels like it's kind of intentionally very obscure. So what I can kind of offer is the best of my understanding from what I've been able to piece together. However,
that is what is most helpful to us.
Okay.
You can only offer us your own knowledge and understanding, and that is what is of value.
Okay.
Can I ask, have you personally been subject to observation via Oxyvision?
No, I haven't. So myself, I've had became involved in the campaign through my own experiences of treatment in mental health wards, but the trusts in my area don't use Oxyvision, so it's not something that I have personal experience of. Other individuals within our kind of core campaign group do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
In terms of the functionality of Oxyvision, it's very helpful that you've explained that there's actually the knowledge that you have is perhaps sort of pieced together from what you can glean. But before we move on, is there anything else at all that you would like to add about the functionality of this technology, what it can and cannot do, how it works?
Yeah, so again, this is really challenging to pin down because there is a lot of misinformation and a real lack of clarity about some of these things. So what we've heard from our accounts from patients who have kind of explained their experience and explained the information they've been given. There's real inconsistencies. People have been told that it's kind of not a camera, or and we might come on to this later, but some of the kind of or what I perceive to be deliberately obscure language using terms like optical sensor or infrared sensor and things which don't explicitly kind of discuss the camera has led to kind of misunderstandings. There's also quite a few sort of caveats to how the actual technology works. One example in relation to the alerts is that if the technology can't distinguish between different human beings. So if a patient is in the bathroom, an alert says patient has been in the bathroom for more than 3 minutes, and then a staff member enters the room, it's not able to distinguish that that's a staff member entering in comparison to the patient leaving. And I believe that if, hypothetically, patient's in the bathroom, staff member walks into the room, then leaves the room, it might then show the room as being empty.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah.
That's helpful, thank you.
I also think if the other caveat is that if somebody comes into the room but goes straight into the bathroom, it doesn't necessarily register it, so it might still show empty rooms. So those are some of the kind of caveats in that sense. There are also so the technology kind of works, it has sort of multiple elements, and because so there's obviously the video camera function and the alerts functions.
Yes.
The way it reads pulse and the way it reads respiration, breathing rate is slightly different. So for breathing rate, I believe if somebody is fully covered by bed covers, because that detects movement, it might still be able to kind of detect that. But with the pulse, this works by using a process called photophletismography, which is it's basically looking at the different absorption of the light and how that changes as somebody's heart beats, and kind of that's from my very crude understanding. I'm not an expert, but that means that there needs to be kind of sufficient amount of skin for it to be able to take that. So if somebody was fully covered by bed covers, it wouldn't be able to take the pulse.
Yes.
Additionally, there are some other things where it's not able to read if someone has like heavy scarring or tattoos, which would include me. It
might affect.
It would affect, or if somebody had poor circulation or was wearing lots of makeup, I think. And where was I going with that? And then the other really big caveat is that the person is required to be still.
Yes.
So where the technology is kind of used through the day, it's quite unlikely that the person will be still enough for that reading to be taken. And if I may be allowed just to refer to one of the exhibits, I can't remember whether it was, I think it was submitted by OxyHealth, but it is the monthly usage reports.
Right.
And they kind of show both the kind of numbers of times that like vital signs have been accessed or attempted.
Yes.
But one of the other things it showed was the kind of the amount of times vital signs were attempted and the amount of times they're actually read.
Yes.
And that was only for one of pulse or respiration rate. And so one of the wards, I know that was Arley ward, I think the percentage was around 26% of the time at least one of the vital signs was actually shown, which I think is quite important in emphasising, because there's often this kind of discussion from trusts and from the company who market this product that, you know, it's all about these vital signs.
Yes.
But actually, if we're hearing that so infrequently it's actually able to take that, it slightly undermines that suggestion.
Yes, I see. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Can I please add just one other thing about that?
Please go ahead.
And this is slightly something that I picked up from the more recent witness statement from EPUT, but has kind of, you know, continually been kind of prevalent in the narrative about the kind of benefits of Oxyvision, is the kind of like value of this technology in terms of monitoring patients' physical health. But I guess the two kind of points to raise there is, one, it's useful to know somebody's pulse and it's useful to know somebody's respiration rates, but these only are, you know, that can only tell you so much about somebody's health. And so when there are phrases like it allows us to confirm that patients are physically well, obviously that's quite concerning, because somebody could be extremely unwell, but that these pulse and respiration rates are showing as kind of within the normal range.
Yes.
Particularly with the technology only kind of showing the pulse between 50 and 130 beats per minute. If you have a look at a news chart, a national early warning signs chart, you can kind of see that actually those parameters kind of exclude the areas that you would be most concerned.
Yes.
Below 50, you would be concerned about bradycardia, and obviously like a pulse of 120 is not very good, but like, I don't know what mine is right now, but it's probably quite high, so...
Take your time, take your time. So I understand. Yeah. So the range then means that areas that would perhaps be of most concern fall outside of it.
Yeah, I think so. And the other thing just to point to, and I'm really sorry, I can't remember exactly which of the exhibits, but it's one of EPUT's exhibits.
Yes. And
it relates to their policies, and it shows that even whilst using Oxyvision, they still have a requirement to do a set of manual physical observations in addition, and that would be using a pulse oximeter, which takes both oxygen saturations and pulse at the same time. And then, the respirations would be done by kind of a staff member kind of manually counting someone's breaths. So whilst, you know, there's a lot of kind of marketing and narrative around the technology as being valuable in kind of confirming patients' physical health, we need to be kind of cautious to not overstate the value of these measurements, and also to emphasize that they are, even just themselves, are aware that they still need to kind of do the manual
alongside.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's very helpful, thank you. I want to ask you something about, you tell us, if you look at the top of page 3 of your witness statement, please.
Yes.
One of the things that you tell us there, talking about Oxyvision technology in general, and how it began and how it grew and its rapid, the rapid growth in its use.
Yeah.
One of the things you tell us is that it was not originally marketed for the purpose we're now discussing. And I think actually you go on later in your statement, we don't need to go to it, to note that this technology was not initially marketed or designed for use on mental health inpatient wards. You mentioned there custody, police custody suites and baby monitors. What, in the view of their campaign, is the concern about that? If there is one, perhaps a better question is there a concern about the fact that the initial purpose of this technology was not use in mental health inpatient facilities?
So, from what I understand, it was kind of originally this there was a kind of invention of this technology, but from kind of piecing together the timeline, it's quite clear that it was not originally intended to be focused on mental health wards. Now, in and of itself, it's not an inherently evil thing to kind of create a technology and sort of spend some time working out the best usage for that. But we do have concerns. So one of them is that it kind of is marketed and kind of, I think in some of the other witness statements, we've got sort of statements about how it was designed for inpatient mental health units, which,
That's right, actually. We don't need to go to it, but Zephan Trent, who's in his first witness statement for EPUT, does tell us, for the record, I think it's at page 1301 of his statement at paragraph 9, what he says is that Oxyvision has been designed specifically for mental health care. You would disagree with that, would you?
Yes, I would. So I would say that that isn't accurate. It was originally kind of created and then trialled in quite a few different settings. And if you go on the Internet Archive Wayback Machine and look at OxyHealth's original website, they had kind of, I can't remember what it was called. It was like application consultants or something. So they had various different people who were advising about the different sorts of settings that this technology might be used for. If you also look at kind of, going back to some of those archived web pages and things, you can also see that the intention was originally for the technology to have additional functions. So one thing that they looked into was adding a oxygen saturations function, adding temperature, adding potentially, no, I'm not sure if I'm remembering that correctly, so I won't say that.
That's all right.
But and it kind of trialled it in sort of acute, physical acute hospitals, neonatal intensive care,
Yes.
and things like that. I think the sense that kind of illustrates to me is that they realised that they couldn't quite get the technology to do exactly what they wanted it to be able to do, in terms of being able to kind of add all of these additional functions. If you look at the, I believe it would be in the kind of Oxyvision service use manual, it kind of does identify that the, and the MHRA, the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulation Agency, it kind of identifies that it shouldn't be used for patients who are kind of very clinically unwell or things like that. So I think, in that sense, it's kind of important contextually that it wasn't specifically designed for psychiatric wards, but it felt that it was a kind of population that occurred to them and a sort of use for the product that they identified. And I think, if I may be allowed to say something which is based in my kind of sense and interpretation of that, is that patients in, like, disabled people, patients in psychiatric hospitals are put in such positions of vulnerability in having kind of rights sort of stripped away, whether that's through being detained under the Mental Health Act, whether that's through a kind of like societal disregard for disabled people and our rights as disabled people. And I think the sense that we've got is that as mad and mentally ill people, we become a kind of convenient group where in other cases we, through the campaign, have felt that there might be more outrage about this if it was happening to a kind of different kind of population of people, and that we kind of face, often people say, oh, but I just thought you'd have cameras in hospitals anyway, like I didn't realise that that wasn't a thing. But I think it kind of speaks more broadly to a sense of how the lack of, you know, the way that our rights are stripped away is kind of accepted and not challenged so much. So that's kind of one of the concerns that we have, is that they have, so, and it is, Oxyvision is still used in some police custody suites,
yes,
and also within the kind of like extra, like, I don't know the term for it really, but a kind of like medical wing of prison. So it is very much this kind of selection of people who have had rights removed, and that's kind of something we'll get onto later when we talk more about like consent and the sort of legality, yes, and things like that. But
and I think later we will come on to that, and I think, would it be fair for me to say that your concerns in that regard about this particular population who may have had rights stripped away already, that actually also there's a vulnerability in that the voices of that population might not be as loud for various reasons as of others?
No, the voices are loud, they're just not listened to.
Maybe a better way to put it.
But yeah,
Much better way to
otherwise,
put it.
yes.
Can I ask you something now? Thank you, Hat. I understand I don't think need to read it because you've explained it beautifully, but the Stop Oxyvision campaign emerged from conversations amongst current and former inpatients. Is that right?
Yes.
And it was founded in 2023.
Yeah, founded feels a little too formal a term, but
it began.
But yes, that's
maybe
kind of when we began. I kind of amusingly remember really trying hard to not get myself dragged into another campaign, but yeah, that didn't happen. That didn't work out, obviously.
Here you are. Yes.
But yeah, so I think I'd like to, on that point, just speak to kind of, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be giving this evidence, but I also think it's very notable that it is our campaign group, Stop Oxyvision, that have kind of done this work and have kind of developed the expertise that we have and kind of contributed to the changes and practices that we have.
Yes.
It's us, it's not the kind of institutions who are charged with regulations or oversight, you know, and we've heard in the previous hearings there was kind of discussion about the different different regulatory bodies and things, and honestly I was more confused after watching all of that, and I think it like really just speaks to how there's this landscape of such a obscure and poorly coordinated system of different providers, where there's a lot of like, we're not going to look at that because that's someone else's job and they're going to do that, but in the space between that there are gaps where people are, you know, patients, disabled people in hospitals are left in real risk, and so that is the space that our campaign has come from, out of the necessity, because if we didn't do this, nobody else was going to do it.
Yes.
And I think that's something that's really like important to recognize, because whilst, as I say, I'm, you know, glad that we're here to be able to do this, it's not a sort of sustainable way for our health service to be kind of held to account by bereaved families and patients, disabled people, people with lived experience.
Yes.
And
Yes, I understand. I think this is one of the reasons, so that's very helpful. I'm interested to know, so we've talked a little bit about the fact that part of the campaign's activity, very important part of its activity, is to collect and collate first-hand experiences.
yeah.
Could you tell us just a little about how that is done, about the approach to doing that?
It's kind of more been through people kind of reaching out to us, people who are, you know, sometimes we get emails from people who are currently on wards and are not sure, you know, how to navigate advocating for themselves and
I see.
that sort of thing. People who are kind of wanting to be able to share their experiences and the harms we've faced. So we do kind of use social media to have these conversations and to connect with people. Really sadly, through the campaign, some people have kind of also only learned from the campaign what the weird box in their bedroom was, and
Yes.
they'd have been so ill-informed about it that it was not through, you know, what it should be posters, like, you know, it being explained on the ward. It was after that they were like, oh, I didn't realise.
Yes.
Do most people get in touch with you while they're on a ward, or do they wait until after they've come out of an institution?
I think a little bit of both, and also lots of people kind of, you know, are in and out of hospital, so might kind of contact at a point when they're in hospital and then get discharged and then get readmitted and things like that. Yeah.
I'd like to move, if you're happy to do that now, to the section of your witness statement which takes up the larger part of it, in which you take us through very comprehensively the major concerns of Stop Oxyvision. So just to give an overview, again, to set it in context, and for those watching or listening, you list those at paragraph 3.2 of your witness statement on page 6.
Yes.
And I'll just read those so that there's a general overview. You say that the concerns can be broadly divided into the following categories: privacy and consent, impact on patient mental health, staffing issues, lack of oversight, discrimination and disproportionate impact. And then last, you have a section in your witness statement about research that has been analysed thus far.
Yes.
So what I'd like to do, I don't want to go through each concern line by line, but I'd like to ensure that you have had the opportunity to explain each in as much detail as you see fit, and also to expand on any of those concerns or give any further information.
Yes.
We'll take them in turn. So if we start with privacy and consent, you say, and I'm paraphrasing, and you must interrupt me at any time, Hat.
Okay.
At paragraph 3.3, you explain that having a camera in a patient bedroom, it represents a very significant invasion of privacy. So that's the starting point of this concern.
Yeah.
You go on to observe in the next paragraph that a bedroom is ordinarily intended as a place of privacy,
Yeah.
but that as a result of the use of this technology, it can provide no sanctuary to that patient from observation.
Yes. So, yeah, one of the things that's just kind of is, yeah, just frustrating at times in this campaign is that, like, nobody wants a camera in their bedroom. That's, like, intrusive, and sometimes, like, it just feels wild that people, like, don't quite understand that concept. So a lot of the kind of marketing materials and sort of, the language that the trust used in relation to this is kind of saying that actually Oxyvision kind of improves privacy because it might be used then in replacement of kind of having a staff member, so on one-to-one, having someone there all of the time,
Yes.
or kind of intermittently checking. But I think there are a few things to note. So one, if there is a camera, you have no way of knowing when somebody is looking at that, and obviously that means that so normally when I've been on wards, you can kind of predict when the staff come to do a check, so you can like plan when you're going to get changed, plan when you're going to because you
Organise your activities.
so that you can kind of maintain that. And obviously if a staff member kind of walked in and you were like getting dressed or something, you would be aware of that. However,
Yes.
with Oxyvision, there is no way of knowing when somebody is looking at that. So it kind of instills this sense that although someone isn't necessarily permanently looking, there is always the potential. So it kind of, is that sort of the like kind of panopticon and that sort of sense of instilling this constant sense of surveillance. And that's where we've had kind of accounts of people, and we've got our patient experience table, which will be considered subsequently, and I won't go into examples, but where people have gone to quite lengths to sort of hide from the cameras because they're so sort of impacted by this sense of just having that there, sort of always potentially watching.
Yes.
And I guess the quotes here, people have described it as intrusive, undignified, dehumanising, and traumatising.
Yes. And those are from accounts that you have received as a campaign from inpatients. Do you consider that there are any steps that could be put in place, just thinking about this general concept of the intrusion and the invasion of privacy that you've described? Do you consider that there are any steps that could be put in place, if not to secure adequate privacy, at least to improve the impact on patients?
I mean, it would probably help to not have a camera in the bedroom.
Fair enough.
And as well, if I might add at this point, because of the layout of some of the bedrooms, and this is specifically relevant to Essex, we are aware that some of the cameras are able to see like the bathroom door area, and mental health wards, they don't tend to put proper doors on the bathroom, so there are kind of
In Essex or elsewhere, they don't put proper doors on the bathroom.
Oh, it's kind of like a general thing, like most wards. So you'll either have sometimes it's a kind of like half door, and sometimes they might have like a curtain. Sometimes they just take the whole door and there's no door to the bathroom, or they also have these. I don't know how to explain it. It's like a saloon.
A saloon?
Like, the little, like...
Swing door.
I know,
Yeah,
it,
swing
like in
doors.
the cowboy films.
Yeah, but then they fall
As
off.
we're going into the bar in the cowboy film. I know what you mean. That only cover a certain section of the door,
Yes, yeah.
but not the bottom or not the top.
Yeah,
I understand.
that's it.
That's a very good description. Saloon is a very good description.
Yeah, it's really... I mean, it's one of the things that you have to spend a lot of time on a mental health ward to understand.
Yeah.
But,
Yes.
but yeah, because of that, some of the Oxyvision cameras are then able to kind of see, as far as we're aware, kind of into the bathroom space.
I see.
And I believe this was in Zeph and Trent's first statement, but they do discuss how they worked with Oxy Health to add a privacy filter, which I believe is a kind of like blurring over the bathroom door, but obviously the patient doesn't know kind of what that looks like.
Yes.
Seclusion rooms, so in seclusion rooms, I feel like it's just too hard to explain, like they don't have like a separate area for a bathroom.
Understood.
Or sometimes people just don't have access to a toilet at all. And in those cases in particular, the sort of toilet area can be seen, and sometimes I think there's like a little like blurred square over where the bathroom is, but like, you know, there's real limits to that.
Well, and also, as you say, the person using that facility wouldn't be aware of what that looks like to the staff member who may or may not be watching.
No.
Understood. One of the other key matters that you go on to mention, it's at paragraph 3.5, but we don't need to read it, we can just discuss it, is a lack of safeguards in place to mitigate the impact on patients of this invasion of privacy, and also to prevent any abuse of the system.
Yes.
So a couple of the examples you give are that where personal electronic devices staff are allowed to use those on the wards, there is no means in place, for example, to stop staff from recording whatever footage is being seen on the staff tablet of a patient bedroom. That's one of your examples.
Yeah.
You also, this is a little bit earlier in your statement, point out that because the footage comes through to a screen or a tablet that a staff member is attending or not, depending on where that is placed, that footage might well be able to be seen by non-medical members of staff or other patients or indeed visitors to the ward.
Yes, and...
Hang on, let me just take you to one of your other examples and then we can discuss them all in the round. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine. If I remember them by the time you go through them.
I'll remind you. Well, it's really to take... Let's see how we go. I think it'll make sense. The other thing that you highlight, crucially, is that where our understanding is that the footage that is captured is 15 seconds at a time. But what you point out is that as far as you're aware, and I appreciate that you've explained very clearly that there is a lack of transparency around the functionality of the technology, but what you say is that there's really nothing to prevent a member of staff continually pressing so that the 15 seconds is simply extended to whatever duration a member of staff might wish to view it for.
Yeah, that's correct. And helpfully my past self has written this here, but if you look at EPUT's monthly usage figures, we can see that on Arley Ward on the 28th of June, between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m, it was used 1,676 times. Assuming full occupancy of the ward, that would be the equivalent of checking all patients every 7.73 minutes. My maths could be like a little bit wrong, but
I can't check your maths. That's not a possibility.
But as you can see there, and you know that again would be assuming that those checks were distributed evenly across all patients. It's not kind of just that the check vital signs view image for 15 seconds is used kind of on an infrequent basis. That's very frequently.
Yes.
And yeah, that one was the ward and the day where it appeared to have been used the most from the insights, the monthly usage reports, but we could see that kind of that was a pattern across many wards where it's quite clear that it's being accessed on multiple occasions. So
yes.
I guess that's probably slightly different to what we were speaking about in terms of some of the safeguards, because obviously one of your other kind of key areas of consideration in the inquiry is around like sexual violence, and so one of the kind of concerns that we have is that there is nothing in place to stop staff kind of using the system maliciously to kind of, view patients in their bedrooms.
Yes.
And the other thing that's always really concerned me is that I feel really horrible saying like all of this, like I'm giving people, I don't know. The alert system basically provides an alert when a person's been in the bathroom for 3 minutes or more, which isn't that long to be fair.
No.
And so, it might be that the person is in the bathroom and that they're at risk, but it's also likely that they might be having a shower, and there's nothing really in place there to stop staff using that.
Maliciously.
Yeah,
Yes.
which is very concerning within the wider context of sexual violence in wards.
Yes. I think my broad question to you, and it may be that your answer is the same as the answer you gave a few minutes ago, do you think there are any particular safeguards that should or could be put in place, for example, to prevent potential abuse of the system or sort of malicious use of it, as you've described?
Yeah, not having cameras in people's bedrooms.
Thank you. Bear with me for one moment.
That's all right.
I think I'd like to move on. I want to check with you actually, Hax. I think I explained to you I'm not great on time, but I think we've been going for almost an hour, and I wanted to check with you whether you'd like to continue or whether you'd like to take a short break.
I'm happy to continue for a little while and then would like a break. I think, I know you originally had sort of suggested we might talk for around an hour or an hour and a half, but I think you may have underestimated how much I have to say.
But that's fine.
But if you'll allow me to kind of continue
Of
and
course.
speak to everything, like I would appreciate that because there's so much to get across and yeah.
I understand that.
But yeah, maybe in a little while we can take a break.
Fine. Do you want to just let me know, or shall we perhaps say 12? Should we say we'll go on for another 10 minutes? It's also the case that a transcript is being taken, and so there are others that need to take a break. But if you're happy,
yeah, of course,
if you're happy to go on for 10 minutes,
Yeah, that
would be
sounds good. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, I have a lot of words.
You mustn't apologise. I'd like to start on the topic of consent now, because this obviously falls within the first major concern about privacy and consent.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm just going to say that I've got like a lot of notes about consent, so that might take a bit longer than 10 minutes. If that's okay.
Yes, well, we don't need to finish that topic in 10 minutes. I didn't mean to suggest that.
Okay,
We
yeah,
can make a
that's fine.
start.
Yeah.
Are you happy to do that?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
All right. So just to set it in context again, you tell us, and this is on page 7 of your witness statement, that one of the things that the campaign has done is to make freedom of information requests to various trusts about their operational procedures in relation to the use of stop oxyvision. And you say there in the second half of this, that paragraph, 3.7, that responses from several trusts, including EPUT, suggest that they rely on a model of implicit consent to the use of the system. In other words, the starting point for many patients is that they are presumed to have opted in to agreement of the use of the system in their bedrooms without any direct explanation of the system itself or of the patient's right to opt out. And you've gone on in the next paragraph to quote from EPUT's standard operating procedure that came to you as a result of a Freedom of Information request in 2023, which, as it was at the time, confirmed that all patients are opted in on admission as part of the Trust's standard procedure, essentially.
Yes, and I can update because I think we say at point 3.9 that we weren't aware whether this standard operating procedure had been changed. The first lot of evidence documents included EPUT's February 2025, I could be wrong on the month, I believe it was February 2025, policy, which remained unchanged with the process of kind of implicit consent. If a patient were to object, it would be the system would be kept on for up to 72 hours until a decision had been made from the staff. So that was correct at that time. Obviously, I won't say anything else.
That's all right. You're very welcome to. I want to ask you quite broadly, and I do realise that having just agreed that we'll take a break at 12, this answer is likely to take you past that. So we're going to stop at 12. But I want to ask, because I'd very much like to hear it from you in your own words. And it may be an obvious question, or perhaps a better way to put it is a question with an obvious answer. Could you just explain what is the problem with this model of implicit consent?
So you're all the barristers, but like implicit consent isn't really a thing. Like, you know, for consent to be true and legal, it needs to be given without coercion, it needs to be informed, it needs to be specific, ongoing, and to not be kind of assumed unless otherwise withdrawn. So I think the phrase implicit consent is, I can't really think of a word, like it doesn't really hold up, you know. It's not consent if it's implicit, like,
Yes, thank you. We're going to come back to some issues that underlie what you say there. I think I want to look now within this topic at the concerns you raise about lack of clarity in relation to the withdrawal of consent, or the ability to withdraw consent, or what people know about that. So, I'm so sorry, patients know about that.
Yeah.
If we if you could look with me, please, at page 9 of your witness statement, and in particular, paragraph 3.15, you tell us there that the lack of transparency ensuring informed consent is compounded by a lack of clarity about what procedures might be in place to enable someone to withdraw their consent. And you tell us there that that's a common theme in some of the accounts that the campaign receives from patients.
yeah. So I guess like the first point is you can't withdraw consent that's never been given in the first place. So that's
Indeed.
kind of the key issue with the sort of opt-out system. If you've never kind of, you can't withdraw consent that was never given. It needs to be informed. And so as I've kind of raised before, we've been working on this campaign for 2 years, and I don't feel confident in my knowledge of how the system works, what it does, all of these things.
Yes.
Which kind of highlights the kind of complexity of it, but also the lack of transparency about what it does, how it works, how information is shared, who has access to the information. And the other thing to point out there is that we also know from kind of the accounts that we've heard from patients and from documents that there is a discrepancy between what Oxyvision is licensed to be used for and the way that it's actually used in practice, which has implications in terms of invalidating the possibility of genuine informed consent. Because if someone's consenting to something to be used in one way and it's actually being used in a different way, that's not consent.
Yes. You tell us at the bottom of paragraph 3.15 that, again, in response to your campaign's freedom of information requests, responses from several trusts reveal that there was no policy in place whatsoever in relation to withdrawal of consent, or indeed to obtaining informed consent in the first place, yes?
Yes. So this is something that we have observed having kind of changed since our campaign, where some trusts have kind of subsequently amended their policies in regards to consent, and we can kind of speak later to how our belief is that that's not sufficient to address the issues and concerns that we have with the technology. But initially most of the trusts didn't have any kind of clear process in place, and in regards to consent for information sharing, the
I'm going to come on to...
Okay, we can talk about that later. Yeah, that's fine.
I think just because I think it'll help you to take us through it, because as you say, it's a complex issue with a lot of facets, and I think I'll take you, after we've had a break, to concerns and issues around data sharing and the processing of information.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I'm not allowed to just ask myself my own questions, am I?
I think you absolutely are. Yeah. Go ahead.
So just again, kind of further in terms of the consent, one of the real things that I cannot stress enough is that the kind of possibility of genuine consent is so undermined within the context of a psychiatric hospital, where coercion is so prevalent, and where people have so little awareness of their rights and might not be in a position to be able to advocate for themselves. So whilst the trust might term this as informed consent, the possibility of that in a system where your rights are so removed is really undermined, and we kind of have heard this as well in terms of kind of the... Hang on, let me start again. I think it opens a lot of space for the potential for staff to kind of encourage and coerce kind of patients into giving consent in that sense. And
I think I've got the point. It's a very coercive environment in which this could be manipulated.
Yeah, and I suppose from our own experiences, there are so many things that you kind of agree to doing that are, at the time you don't recognise how that you have a right to say no to those things, and there's kind of sort of threats of punishment and sanctions and things for not kind of complying with certain things.
On that subject, again, perhaps I'm so sorry, I should have made this clear. I think the issues that you've raised in your witness statement around hostility or hostile reactions to concerns raised by patients, I'm going to take you through separately, because you've got a whole paragraph about that, which is very helpful. Then we'll move on to some of the concerns you've raised about data sharing and data being processed. I wonder, Chair, if I could suggest that we take a break now. I'll leave the amount of time up to you, of course.
Shall we say 10 minutes? 10 minutes? Is that right?
Chair, that concludes the first video of Hat Porter's evidence. Can I propose that we break for 10 minutes and resume at 11:20?
11:20.
And I'd like to...
Mr. Hayes.
Chair, we will now resume with the pre-recorded evidence of Hat Porter. I understand that there is in fact a short period of the first video still to play, which we'll play before we proceed to the second video.
Thank you.
I'd like to move on to something we mentioned just before the break about the retention by providers and use of footage that is recorded by Oxyvision.
Yes.
if we look at page 11 of your witness statement and paragraph 3.18, what you say, starting in the second line, is that there's a capacity, I'm paraphrasing, for footage to be clipped and retained, but that the circumstances in which that might occur, the processes which might apply, and the use to which any such footage might be put is unclear, yes?
Yes, and obviously that speaks to the previous point about informed consent.
Indeed, and you give an example, I don't think we need to go to it, later on in your statement, for the record it's at paragraph 5.10, about the campaign having become aware of footage being used in academic studies without the consent of those who are pictured in it.
Yes, so this was a study. It wasn't looking at the sort of effectiveness of the technology, but what it was using was the blurred footage to kind of, I think what they were seeking to do was identify kind of precursors to self-harm or kind of aggressive behaviour and things, but this meant that the blurred video footage of patients was shared with a research team. I think, to my knowledge, they actually then found that the footage they weren't able to kind of do what they had sought to do with that.
Yes.
But obviously that is concerning because that's not something that's been mentioned in any of the policies that I can identify. It's not mentioned in any of the data protection impact assessments either. And yeah, obviously there are kind of significant implications. So just to note, we made a complaint to the HRA, which is the Health Research Authority,
yes.
The NHS Research Ethics Board. And they kind of, in response to our complaint, sort of decided that the blurred footage wasn't adequately anonymised.
Yes.
And I'd just like to point to one of the exhibits, which is the complaint that we submitted to.
Yes.
Yes, we're aware of that,
Yeah, and the inquiry have obviously made the decision to redact the face of the blurred footage, which kind of again speaks to the sort of limitations of that and how
Yes.
it could still be identified.
And indeed, even we might say, or you must tell me if you agree, that even where an image is blurred, it doesn't necessarily make it anonymous, even if a face is blurred.
Yes, absolutely.
I think in relation to that correspondence that you're talking about, that we have indeed seen, the NHS Health Research Authority, in response to your complaints about that particular study, I think it's the case that the favourable ethical opinion that had been indicated was suspended, yes?
That is correct. The study had actually been given ethical approval and had finished, but the ethical approval was kind of still retracted at that point. What I would emphasise there is that we, whilst we agreed with the decision to retract that ethical approval, we do have concerns that that was kind of offered in the first place, and that
Yes.
kind of scrutiny wasn't given, particularly within the context of Essex Mental Health Trust, where there are kind of, ongoing concerns, and to the magnitude of having such an inquiry, that there wasn't kind of consideration given to whether or not it was safe and appropriate to sort of endorse the trust as the research site.
Yes. Thank you. Can I move, please, to what you say in your witness statement about the information that is provided to those being admitted to inpatient mental health facilities about what this technology is, what it can do, and what the processes are. To put it in context, and actually to highlight your key points, on page 8 of your witness statement, at paragraph 3.11, just about halfway down, you tell us this: patient accounts shared with Stop Oxyvision have made reference to limited and at times completely inaccurate information being shared by trusts regarding their surveillance systems. with some patients having been informed that there wasn't a camera in this technology. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. And I think what we have observed from the posters is that these kind of often use phrases which appear to be deliberately opaque, and kind of terms such as optical sensor or infrared sensor, things
Yes.
like that, which sort of dance around the fact that it is a camera. It might have kind of additional elements, but it is a camera.
Yes.
And one with the capacity to record.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, no, I get the point.
Coming onto that topic, you talk in your witness statement about the fact that a number of trusts appear to rely, or a number of units, appear to rely on posters to be the giver of information about what this system is. Before we move on to any of those posters or the limitations of the posters themselves, what do you as a campaign say is deficient about using a poster as the source of information to inform patients about what is happening?
Yeah, it's kind of because that we don't necessarily know where exactly on the ward the poster is displayed. It's obviously not necessarily kind of easily made available to people. Obviously, when someone's incredibly unwell, they're not necessarily walking around the ward looking to read information on posters. And I know we'll come a little later on to some of the concerns in regard to kind of inequalities and differential and disproportionate impacts.
Yes.
But obviously, if somebody had kind of limited ability to read written English for a variety of reasons, that information would then be less accessible, particularly where it's using kind of quite complicated phrasing.
Yes.
And that also goes back to your point about circumstances in which somebody finds themselves, as a rule, in these facilities.
Yeah.
And an environment where they feel disempowered. Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
One of the things that you tell us, just looking at page 9 and paragraph 3.13, is that although some of them may or may not have been updated since your campaign sourced the posters that you have through freedom of information requests, none of them explain that data is shared with the manufacturer OxyHealth.
Yeah.
Only 2 of the posters you have informs patients that the technology tracks when and how often they go to the bathroom.
Yes.
7 did not include the word camera, and instead used this term you've described as opaque and confusing optical sensor.
Yeah.
The EPUB poster, and I don't think we need to go to it, does not explain that the footage is recorded. Is that right?
As far as I remember, I've
Yes.
not got it in front of me, but yeah.
Doesn't mention that video footage is retained if there's an incident.
Yeah.
And doesn't say anything at all about the fact that the manufacturer OxyHealth has access to the data that is collected by that technology.
Yes, and indeed, the OxyHealth is the data processor.
Yes. Could you tell me this? What would you like to see as a campaign instead of the posters that we've talked a little about for properly informed properly informed consent to be given, or indeed not given? What would that look like? What do you think that process should look like or involve?
So I think, as I've kind of outlined our position as a campaign, is that we don't believe that this technology is compatible with safe, patient-centred, and indeed legal treatment. So in that sense, you could have all the posters in the world, but we don't have a position that would facilitate informed consent in the context of the coercive environment of a
So let me understand this.
hospital.
Your position is there could never be appropriate consent given. Is that right?
Yeah.
Thank you. I think we should turn now to the other concerns. I'm conscious of time.
Very well.
I've read your statement, so I have now got a full picture of your issues of my concern. Thank you.
Of course. I'll turn then, Hat, to... we're going to deal with this from page 13 of your witness statement. This is another central concern that the campaign raised in relation to staffing issues.
Yes.
And the campaign's concerns, I think, are very well summarised in the first part of paragraph 3.26, where you say this: Stop Oxyvision is concerned that Oxyvision and other vision-based monitoring systems are being used as a superficial quick fix for wider systemic issues in mental health care, including inadequate levels of staffing and high levels of poor practice on mental health wards.
Correct.
You go on to say, and I won't read it all, but you go on to say on the next page at paragraph 3.28 that what these systems allow for is an absence of face-to-face engagement. This is remote monitoring, which either reduces or at worst removes the opportunity for face-to-face therapeutic engagement. Is that a fair summary of the concerns?
Yeah, that's correct. And then I'd just like to point to one of the additional evidence documents, which is the EPA and OxyHealth Early Insights and Implementation Lessons Learned report, where there is an example of a ward manager saying that now having Oxyvision, they're able to take the tablet that shows the Oxyvision to a meeting, leaving just one member of staff on the ward. So this is in the context of like kind of debriefings for staff after incidents and things, but what they're kind of suggesting, and I've not got it in front of me, so
that's all right.
but that having this technology has enabled them to leave just one person on a ward that might be for kind of up to or like 18, 22 kind of patients.
A large number of patients.
Yeah.
Yes. Which, without that technology, wouldn't be something that would be considered acceptable, presumably.
Well, it's not acceptable with the technology.
No. But wouldn't be done then, let me put it in that way.
It shouldn't be done, yeah.
You also highlight, and I think this is crucial that we understand it, that part of the concern is that staff who are charged with using this technology may either misunderstand its capacities, overestimate, and therefore over-rely on the technology. Can you tell us a little about your concerns in that regard?
Yeah, so I think it speaks again to the point I made previously about some of the misconceptions around Oxyvision, and one of them in particular is that there's a kind of interpretation from staff then passed on to patients that the technology can kind of like alert to, one of the phrases is like alert to deteriorations in health, but it doesn't provide alarms to change. It can't read a pulse below 50, so it can't read a pulse of 0. And yeah, I guess in that sense, there is a kind of risk that people might kind of rely on and be reassured by technology to do something that it is not capable of doing. Yes. And there is an example which I presume we have put in the document from a CQC report, and referencing an incident where the camera was actually switched off and during a period which a patient died. But the only information about that is from a CQC report. So. But I guess that speaks to the grave risks of over-relying on technology.
Yes, including risks to physical safety of patients, yes?
Absolutely.
Yes. In terms of the effect, one of the things you say in the section of your witness statement is that there is a real concern that this technology either could be or indeed is being used as a substitute for proper patient care. Mm-hmm. Could you tell us a little about whether that is a theme in the accounts that the campaign has received?
Yes, that's a theme in the accounts that we've received from patients, which when we come to looking at our patient experience testimony table, we'll highlight, but also as a theme from some of the other documents that we've reviewed. So particularly one of the kind of marketing narratives around the technology is looking at how this can save costs in terms of reducing staffing.
Yes.
And there's the example of I'm going to forget which trust it is. I don't want to misremember which trust, but one of the trusts have kind of used the example from Coventry and Warwickshire and showed that they could save X number, I think like 3 point something healthcare assistants by having technology instead of staff, which is obviously incredibly dangerous.
Yes. Thank you. I think unless the chair has any other questions at this moment on the issue of staffing, I'd like to take you to one of the campaign's other central concerns about lack of oversight.
Yes.
You've given a very helpful summary about the very rapid rollout of the use of this technology across various NHS trusts. And if we look, again, it's very well summarised there in your witness statement. If we look at the very end of page 17, you say that the campaign's concern is that this rapid expansion has occurred in the context of a fundamental absence of critical engagement with patients, trusts, and the system manufacturers, and a simultaneous lack of oversight from the regulatory bodies who would be charged with that very oversight.
Yeah.
I've added those.
Incredibly dangerous.
Yes. Thank you. I think unless the chair has any other questions at this moment on the issue of staffing, I'd like to take you to one of the campaign's other central concerns about lack of oversight.
Yes.
You've given a very helpful summary about the very rapid rollout of the use of this technology across various NHS trusts. And if we look, again, it's very well summarised there in your witness statement. If we look at the very end of page 17, you say that the campaign's concern is that this rapid expansion has occurred in the context of a fundamental absence of critical engagement with patients, trusts, and the system manufacturers, and a simultaneous lack of oversight from the regulatory bodies who would be charged with that very oversight.
Yeah.
I've added those words, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Stop Oxyvision is and remains particularly concerned that the regulatory bodies have been slow to recognise and respond to the concerns being expressed by patients, their families, and the staff whom these systems directly impact.
Yeah, so the Care Quality Commission did identify in 2022 concerns about the lack of consent for the use of the technology within its inspection of Essex wards. But there were a number of inspections prior to that where Oxyvision is mentioned in passing, but without kind of going into details. And in our in the witness statement, we quoted the example from West London, where
West London, yes.
Yeah, so it's kind of it appears that CQC have kind of done multiple inspections, but it's taken time for them to actually kind of look into these issues in more depth, which is very concerning. And this kind of speaks to the point I raised earlier on about the fact that we've had to do this work in the absence of those who you would expect to be doing that. But I think one of the senses that we have in this campaign is that if we weren't doing investing our time into Stop Oxyvision, there's so many other things, and I think it's a really critical issue, particularly in the kind of age we're in now with like rapid expansions in and developments in technology. There needs to be a better process to keep on top of these and to make sure things are rolled out in a... Sorry?
Sorry to interrupt you, but has your organisation had direct contact with the regulators? Have you been lobbying them, as it were, about this?
We met with somebody from CQC about quite early into the campaign, so I'd say maybe around 18 months ago, and had a little contact at that point, but never had any other follow-up from them, really.
They've not come back to you?
No, so we have made our complaints, but they've been kind of remarkably and notably silent on the issue, and I think it kind of I think that sort of summarises that.
I might touch on that correspondence, in fact, that you've had with some of the regulators in a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, is this right? Your point is that it's about the fact that these regulatory bodies are only despite the fact that inspections were continuing, and we can see from your summary of the report in relation to West London that you've quoted at paragraph 3.38, that there is recognition that this technology is being used, but not in any fundamental aspect of analysis or examination of the impact of that. And it's only now, is this fair, that you think this issue is beginning to be recognised?
Yeah, as a result of the activism of patients.
Well, of your campaign and others, presumably.
Yeah.
I'd like to go, Hat, if you're happy, to what you have to say, or what the campaign has to say, I'm so sorry, about discrimination and the disproportionate impact on certain groups in relation to the use of this technology. And I think, you must tell me if I have this wrong, your major and fundamental point is that the possibility of discrimination and the possibility of a disproportionate impact simply has not been considered adequately, if at all.
Yeah, not at all. So one of the things that we've asked for in freedom of information requests has been equality impact assessments. EPUT responded that they wouldn't do one of those. Obviously,
has that been the case elsewhere too?
Yeah, and I would say that is not just in relation to Oxyvision, but is also kind of prevalent across policies. So if you look, it's in one of the exhibits, but EPUT's observations policy has an equality impact assessment, I believe, that identifies no disproportionate or differential impacts for any people in relation of protected characteristics. But I would say that isn't unique to EPUT and isn't specific just to Oxyvision. This is very much a kind of widespread issue that equality impact assessments are either not done or they are done but just say there's no kind of
Nothing
risk of
to see
different
here.
impacts. Or on the other hand, as we've kind of quoted at point 3.45 on page 20.
Yes, I'm going to come to that. Go on.
Yeah,
Please go ahead.
so the other thing is that in some instances the equality impact assessments do identify risks but do nothing to make any to actually address or mitigate the harms that they've identified.
So they just identify them and then move on?
Yes.
In relation to the particular assessment that you've cited there at paragraph 3.45, as you say, there has at least been an identification of the potential for negative, in particular negative impacts, but no suggested actions or plan to address any of those. And to summarise, they're listed as, this is at 3.45, that service users with disabilities may have their mental health particularly negatively impacted by the system, that service users with learning disabilities may not be able to fully understand how the system, in fact, impacts on their privacy and dignity, and may not be able to provide meaningful consent. Then there are concerns around dignity and privacy, both for female service users who might be impacted by male members of staff, and for transgender patients who may be outed by staff observing them at certain points.
Yeah, and obviously that speaks to just how intrusive, and, you know, emphasising that the technology, the camera, allows patients to be seen naked and have, you know,
Yes.
genitals observed, which is obviously incredibly intrusive.
Those concerns come from the particular assessment that you've cited. What I wondered was whether you as a campaign have anything further to say about any other particular negative impacts or disproportionate impacts that this technology could have on groups of people with protected characteristics.
Yeah, I mean, point A there, service users with disabilities, is interesting, as I think arguably a large proportion of people admitted to a psychiatric hospital would meet the Equality Act definition of disability, which includes psychiatric conditions. I think the thing is, it exists within a context of real injustices within psychiatric services, how kind of institutional racism, like gender-based violence, and how all of these things are enacted. The problem with introducing a new technology into a system without addressing those harms is that it only becomes part of that.
Yes.
And can I ask about neurodiversity in particular? Are there any observations you'd want to make about the impact of Oxyvision in relation to those with neurodiversity?
I think in particular for like the learning disability context, as I've said, having posters, and these have rarely been made available in formats such as Easy Read. It impacts on people's ability to understand the system. We have an example in the patient experience table, which I won't speak to, but kind of
You can, if you're struggling with it now, you can write in and let us know if there's anything you wanted to say about that in particular.
Okay.
Thank you. I think I'd like to ask you now just a little about, you've talked about this a few minutes ago in terms of formal reviews and complaints in relation to the use of Oxyvision that the campaign has been involved in. You tell us about those fairly comprehensively at section 5 of your witness statement, which starts on page 26. And there you detail, obviously we've considered this carefully, the concerns and correspondence that have been raised with NHS England, the CQC, and the ICO.
Yes.
You also, sorry, actually, just stopping there, in relation to the ICO, you tell us, I think, you must tell me, is any response to that particular complaint, is that still outstanding?
Yeah, I have an update on this. So I sent the complaint, I can't remember what date, October.
Yes, October 2024.
Yeah, and so received a response about 6 months later saying that they were closing the complaint because I needed to have complained to Oxy Health first. And I think this really speaks to what we heard in one of the previous evidence sessions about how complex the complaint process is, and it's, you know, if you don't complain in the right way, and I don't know, how am I meant to know what the right way to complain is? They just close it. So I have responded to that, which I did yesterday, saying that I didn't feel in a position to be able to make a complaint to Oxy Health whilst they're a core participant and I'm a witness in an ongoing inquiry. So
I see.
We'll see if they respond, but for now they've closed the request and I don't know what else to do about it.
Yes. That's helpful, thank you. There are also a number of complaints that you raised to a number of different journals in relation to articles about the use of Oxyvision, and in particular, I think, in relation to the use of figures that you consider to be fundamentally misleading.
Yeah, that would be correct. And no, I don't have an update on any of those. I've chased them many times and don't have an update, but to speak more broadly to that point, that is something that we've observed through multiple kind of both like peer-reviewed academic publications, but also the sort of more summaries of research. For example, the Early Insights report, which is actually twice in in the evidence packs, where there appears to be a kind of presentation of figures in a way which would be more favourable if you were seeking to kind of promote your technology, shall I say. So the specific example that we raised some complaints about related to the conflation of a absolute and a relative reduction. So this basically, they kind of have said that there was a 44% relative reduction in self-harm, but that was actually accounted for by the fact that the change in self-harm on the supposed control ward was greater than that on the Oxyvision ward. So what it's presenting is not that there was a 44% decrease in self-harm, but that self-harm just went up loads on one of the wards and down a little bit on the other.
Yes.
And in a kind of, that, yeah, obviously, like methodologically, there's kind of numerous issues with that, but to kind of take that more broadly, the concern is that the kind of like academic peer review or like scientific processes used as kind of marketing materials and is, as I think, as you said, it's, you know, is misleading.
Yes. Thank you. No, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt.
If I may just say as well on that point, because it was something that that we identified in EPUT's first statement.
Yes.
They speak to some of the figures from the Early Insights report, and these kind of basically they've asked patients and staff to kind of rate certain things on a scale. For patients, it was a scale of 1 to 5. But what they did was exclude the responses where people said 3, which methodologically is a bizarre thing to do. So where they have said 70% of patients felt the system improved their well-being on the ward, that figure was achieved by excluding a third of the responses. So I've recalculated that if you include the people that said 3 out of 5, to actually be 47%. And these figures are quoted in the original witness statement from EPUT, without giving the details of the methodology and the kind of unusual decision to kind of exclude some of those. And whilst the numbers in themselves are, it's the kind of the principle of manipulating figures to present a more favourable opinion. Those figures were given to the board of directors. I think it would be as part of the proposal to expand the rollout of
Yes.
Oxyvision. But I think it's it speaks as well to the point about the kind of disrespect to patients' accounts, kind of, you know, when people are saying, well, this is what I felt of the system, and that's being, you know, excluded because it's not so favourable, or appears that might have happened, that would be, very concerning. But I've reanalyzed that so you can have the correct or the percentages if we don't exclude people that said 3 out of 5.
Yes, that's very helpful.
That. And you'll let us have that?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Hat, we're coming close to 1 o'clock, and one of the things that I wanted to ask you to do, there may be more questions for you, either from the chair or the ordinary process, and I understand that your legal representatives are keen for us to do this as usual today, is that when I have come to the end of my questions for you, we take a short break of around about 10 minutes so that you can consider whether there's anything additional you want to say, and so that they can raise any additional questions that they would like me to put. But before we do that, I wondered if you might read to us, please, the final section of your witness statement, if you feel able to do so, which relates to the challenges that are faced, I'm so sorry, by you and other campaigners who volunteer your time to do this work. Are you happy to do that?
I might. I'll start and see if it's going to take me a while, and then we can paraphrase it. But,
of course.
So the main challenge that we have faced campaigning for Stop Oxyvision has been the personal toll that is taken on us, upon all of us who are directly involved in the campaign's work. Whilst the work of listening to and collating patient experiences and raising awareness about these systems is so important to us all, it has also impacted on each of us. Many of us who volunteer our time for Stop Oxyvision. Sorry, I actually find it quite hard reading out loud. Is it okay if I just summarise?
Absolutely, that would probably be better.
The point it's kind of speaking to is the impact that it has had on all of our kind of our own health at various points, and I think it would also be fair to say that the worst part of that by far has been kind of the past few weeks in preparing for the inquiry, and disruption and things has had the kind of, at least speaking for myself, has had the greatest impact. But in terms of one of the particularly difficult things is that in having to access some of the documents and things, it exposes us to content which is quite unsafe. So obviously reading through coroner's reports and stuff isn't a very safe thing to do for people who have their own kind of health problems and risks and things. So that obviously has a really substantial impact, and obviously it's important, again, as I have kind of repeated, to contextualise the fact that ideally it would not be us as kind of as disabled people with lived experiences of these services who are having to do this. We do this because the sense is that if we didn't, there's not someone else who is doing that currently, and the kind of gravity and magnitude and how much this has the potential to harm and traumatise and contribute towards deaths means that we feel kind of compelled to have to do that in the absence of others taking the responsibility and accountability that is needed. But that's not a sustainable way to be doing this, and
I entirely see your point on that, and for what it's worth, I must also acknowledge that it will not have been easy for you to come and give evidence. I quite see that. No one finds these experiences easy, if I can offer you comfort in that respect. And you have made your points very clearly, and I've taken them on board, and I'm very grateful to you for coming to do this, so thank you.
Thank you.
If you're content, should we take a short break, perhaps 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Lovely.
Chair, thank you. Hat, I have 3 further questions for you.
Okay.
None of them are terribly long. The first is in relation to one of the concerns that you've set out in your witness statement, which is the impact on patient mental health of the use of this technology. Now, we did touch on that during the course of your evidence, but what I hadn't asked you about, and I would like to, is this. You told us a little about patients taking steps to avoid the camera, if and once they're aware of it. And you go on to say in your witness statement, if you want to look at it, and for the record, it's at page 13 and paragraph 3.23, that the first-hand experiences that your campaign has collated indicate that the use of this technology makes patients feel unsafe in the way that you've described, but also might in fact be contributing to them being actually physically unsafe. And the example you give there is that some patients report changes in their patterns of self-harm to exploit blind spots or loopholes, or the use of novel and different methods of self-harm that can't be monitored by a remote system.
Yeah, so I kind of, self-harm is something that people do because it serves a kind of purpose. So if you sort of seek to stop that without addressing the kind of underlying pain and distress that people are experiencing, it very often then leads to people kind of finding alternative ways.
And that was a point made in evidence earlier this week by the psychiatrist who is an expert.
Yeah, a little clumsily, I would say, but yeah.
A little
clumsily.
But it still got through to you, don't worry.
Sorry, I'm not here to fight for it.
It's all right.
But yes, it was raised, yes.
I heard it, though.
Thank you. The next question is about section 4 of your witness statement on research, which we haven't touched on, but which has been very carefully considered, and you can be assured of that.
Yeah.
I think what I would like to highlight is what you say, if you want to take a look at it.
Sorry, what page is it?
I'm so sorry, at page 23, and in particular at paragraph 4.7.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Sorry, go ahead. Ignore us. Sorry, go on.
Okay.
Did I interrupt you?
No, I was sort of waiting for a question, but I
see.
can just talk to the paragraph in general.
Please
so,
do.
This was just kind of emphasising the conflicts of interest within the research. So, obviously, and you've also kind of heard in previous hearings about the kind of concept of like evidence-based practice, but when we talk about evidence, that needs to be independent and to a high standard. When we're talking about a company that sells a product for profit, they obviously have vested interests in kind of being able to present that in a way that will help them to kind of get the sales and things that that they want. So that's the kind of concern where there are conflicts of interest. And obviously, as I've kind of spoken to before, there's been some sort of unusual methodological approaches and things.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. That was related to the.
Well, in particular, what you say there is that 8 out of the 9 studies reported conflicts of interest, in that they were either funded by OxyHealth or co-authored by its employees.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yes, thank you. My last question relates to some of the discussions we've had during the course of your evidence about freedom of information requests.
Yeah.
And you've talked a little too about the lack of transparency, the difficulty of sort of trying to piece together information to understand the functionality of the technology and its use. And you've explained that a great deal of the information that your campaign has managed to obtain has come to you through freedom of information requests. At the outset of your evidence, you mentioned finding it very difficult to get more information about private providers.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about what the implications of that are if we move towards a system where healthcare is privatised more and more, the position that campaigns such as yours might find yourselves in when the Freedom of Information Act doesn't apply to a private provider, and what you think might need to change in relation to that.
Yeah, so one of the kind of things that's been really important in the work that we've done in the campaign is kind of to counter the lack of transparency. We have accessed documents and then made them available on a Google Drive so that patients can then see what the policy is for the trust and things. But there are so many barriers to that because often information requests are kind of not responded to or withheld. So one of the kind of key things is that often information is withheld on the basis of commercial interests. So
yes.
One thing is that we did a Freedom of Information request to the MHRA to request the details about, so Oxy Health, I think, say at points in their statement that Oxyvision works for patients with all skin tones. They use the word skin types, but skin tones. But we requested the evidence to kind of demonstrate, like, to understand what research had been conducted to consider this, but that request was refused on the basis of commercial interest, and it then went through a public interest test, and yeah, they maintained that it wasn't, so we haven't been able to access that.
I see.
With regards to the private providers, so to my knowledge, in England at the moment, there are like 50 mental health trusts. One of those is Live Well Southwest in Plymouth, which is operated by a community interest company. As a result, they don't technically come under the definition of a public authority. They don't come under the Freedom of Information Act. And so in relation to this campaign, but also others, I've done loads of FOIs to them and we don't get anything back on that basis. But also we have lots of private providers such as Signet, Priory. One of them is, so it was formerly known as Huntercombe, but now the Active Care Group. So they use Oxyvision, which we know from kind of some of their like websites and Oxy Health's marketing materials. But other than that, we're not able to access information because they don't count as a public. I can't remember what the legal term.
A public body. Yes.
Yeah, a public body. So they don't include in that, which means that they just withhold the information. So, like, my feeling from this campaign and kind of other work that I've done would be particularly in the context of kind of increasing privatisation, that there needs to be a reconsideration of the definition of public authority to include healthcare providers which are funded by the NHS but operate independently, because we rely so much on the very, very few tools that we have available to us to kind of counter this lack of transparency and accountability, and that is just kind of a block that does keep coming. So I'm glad to be able to raise that. I think it's really important.
Thank you. Hat, I don't know, you may be glad to hear or not that I don't have any further questions for you. I don't know whether or not the chair has.
I don't. Thank you. I'm very grateful to you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm very grateful to you for your careful answers to the questions. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you. Is that the end?
You're free to go.
Okay.
Chair, that concludes the pre-recorded evidence of Hat Porter. May I propose a 15-minute break, and we will resume with the evidence of Zephyr Trent at 12:30.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Hayes. It's terrific. Thank you.
I, Zephyr Trent,
do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare
do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare
and affirm that the evidence I shall give
and affirm that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Please give your full name.
My name is Zephyr Marcus Andrew Trent.
You have provided the inquiry with 3 statements. Dealing with the first statement, is it dated the 21st of March this year, and is it 29 pages long?
Yes.
And similarly with the second statement, is it dated the 9th of May this year, and is it 16 pages long?
Yes.
And finally, the third statement, can you confirm that that is dated the 2nd of September this year and is 11 pages long?
Yes.
And can you confirm that they are accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
In each case, have you made a statement of truth and signed the statement?
Yes, I have.
Thank you. Your statements stand as part of your evidence along with the exhibits you've provided. I will not therefore be asking you about all of the matters that you've covered in them. So, are you the Executive Director of Strategy, Transformation and Digital within Essex Partnership University NHS Foundation Trust, or EPUT?
Yes, I am.
What does that role entail?
I'm a member of the executive team and a non-voting member of the board. I have a portfolio where I lead on the strategy development for the organisation, including our 5-year plan, for example. I provide leadership and coordination on transformation across the organisation, things like the Time to Care programme you've heard about previously. And I have oversight of our digital services within the organisation.
And when you say digital services, would that include technologies such as Oxyvision?
It would include, and I'm sure we'll come on to this, it would include the digital technology and systems, but is distinct from the oversight of those on the wards, etc.
Thank you. And have you held that position since you joined EPUT in April 2022?
Yes, I have.
And since the 15th of July 2022, have you also held the position of Senior Information Risk Owner, or CIRO?
Yes, I have.
And what does that role entail, please?
So the CIRO, or the Senior Information Risk Officer, is the person who has the overall accountability for information risk management within an NHS trust. And that role is importantly alongside the Caldecott Guardian, which will be a senior clinical leader with responsibility for patient information, and is typically, and is also the case in EPUT, supported by an information governance team and specifically a data protection officer.
So you mentioned working alongside the Caldecott Guardian. I'm not sure if everyone heard your description of what that position is. Could you just say that again, please?
Yes, so the Caldecott Guardian, this is a role that was established after the recommendations of Dame Caldecott, and it requires a senior clinician, often the trust medical director or the trust chief nurse, to have oversight of how patient information is used.
Thank you very much. You hold Bachelor of Arts with honours and Master of Science degrees. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you're also a Chartered Financial Analyst Charter holder. Is that a professional designation that relates to matters such as investment analysis?
Yes, it is.
But is it right you're not clinically qualified?
That is correct.
And do you, in your roles, report directly to EPUT's Chief Executive Officer, Paul Scott?
Yes, I do.
We've previously heard that EPUT was formed at the beginning of April 2017 by the merger between South Essex Partnership University NHS Foundation Trust and North Essex Partnership University NHS Foundation Trust. But we're unlikely to be referring to the predecessor trusts because Oxyvision, as we heard yesterday and we'll discuss later today, was first rolled out at EPUT in 2020. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Now, before we move on, I understand there's something that you would like to say.
Yes, thank you. I would like to say how sorry I am to all of those who lost loved ones under the care of mental health services in Essex for the poor care that they received. I would also like to apologise, if I may, Chair, to you and to the other court participants, and especially the witnesses, for the late submission of evidence in the April hearings, and in particular the impact that that had on the inquiry and those other witnesses. Thank you.
Today we'll be discussing EPUT's use of the Oxyvision system, which is provided by a company that was formerly called OxyHealth, but has recently rebranded to the name Leo, capital L-I-O. For the sake of simplicity, I suggest that today we refer to OxyHealth.
Yes.
We considered Oxyvision and how it operates yesterday with Laura Cousins, who is Head of Patient Safety and Quality at OxyHealth. And she described the operation of the system, its advantages as OxyHealth perceives them, and I asked her about concerns that had been raised about the way Oxyvision operates in practice, amongst other matters. I understand you heard her evidence yesterday, is that right?
Yes, I did in full.
We heard that Oxyvision is a type of technology that is sometimes referred to as a vision-based patient monitoring system, or VBPMS, or sometimes just VBMS. Is that correct?
Yes.
Could you confirm that Oxyvision is the only vision-based patient monitoring system in use by EPUT on mental health inpatient wards and units?
Yes, I can confirm that.
You describe Oxyvision in your first statement as a vision-based patient monitoring system to monitor vital signs of patients within select single occupancy rooms and secure environments, correct?
Yes.
You also refer to vital signs software, which we heard about yesterday, and say that it operates with an infrared sensitive camera linked to an interface in a nurse station and on portable tablets. And you add it doesn't require the patient to wear or be connected to any device. Now, we heard and saw an example of a camera, monitor and tablets yesterday, but I would like just to remind us of that before we move on. So I'm going to ask that the slide from yesterday is put up, please. OXHE 009041 at page 4. So we can see the camera unit there on the left-hand side, is that right?
Yes.
And it is effectively split into two, and we can see two squares on the left-hand side. Do you see those?
Yes.
Now, from what I understood yesterday, are those the infrared sensors or emitters?
Yes, as I understand it, although of course Oxyvision are best to advise on their specific hardware.
And we heard that they glow, in fact, all the time.
Yes.
And the camera would be to the right of that unit, correct?
Yes.
And then we can see a monitor in the middle there that would be found in the nurse's station, right?
Yes.
And an example of a tablet that individual members of staff might carry with them.
Yes.
Thank you. Could that go down, please? You add that Oxyvision is used as an assistive tool for staff working on EPUT wards with a view to improving and enhancing patient safety. And you say it's intended for non-invasive spot measurements of pulse rate and estimated breathing rate so that staff do not need to disturb a patient's sleep to undertake these measurements. You add this, and this is paragraph 9 of your first statement, it is not a substitute for staff visually confirming that a patient is safe, and we'll come back to that particular point. Is it right, as we've heard, that Oxyvision was first rolled out at EPUT in April 2020?
Yes.
And was that initially to 2 wards, and then the rollout continued from there?
Yes, so there was a pilot, and it's set out in paragraph 14 of my statement.
In fact, was the pilot, as we'll hear, was the pilot in relation to 4 wards?
Yes.
Thank you. We're going to have a look at a list in a moment.
Yeah.
You say Oxyvision has been introduced in EPUT across selected inpatient wards, seclusion rooms, and health-based places of safety, and we'll come back to that point as well. We also heard yesterday about another aspect of the Oxyvision system that is called Oxyvision Observations, or sometimes shortened to OxyObs. And this is what you tell us about it in your first statement. These are paragraphs 27 and 28, but I'll summarise. Oxyvision Observations is a digital observation module within the Oxyvision system. It's a digital version of the paper observations record and is implemented only on Oxyvision-equipped inpatient wards, seclusion rooms and health-based places of safety. You describe how staff carry out on-time observations using the handheld tablets that we've just seen, and that this allows for the recording of comments, individual risk factors, and assists in the identification of trends. And you say that it provides a clear record of observations in a digital format for integration to EPUT's electronic patient record. And you mentioned that it's necessary at the moment manually to upload the observations to the EPR, the electronic patient record. But you at EPUT are hoping that after some delays, this process will be automated. Is that all correct?
Yes.
At this stage, I'd like to look at a recent document from EPUT that covers both Oxyvision vital signs and Oxyvision observations. Now, this is the clinical safety case report for Oxyvision and Oxyvision observation from the 30th of April this year. So could we put up, please, EPUT 008 999 at page 5. Thank you. Could you, can we see here modules of the Oxyvision system? Would it be possible, Amanda, to expand from that down? Oh, if it's not, maybe just highlight. Thank you. That's perfect. Just reading part of this first. Can we see there modules of the Oxyvision system? And first of all, we see Oxyvision vital signs. Just reading the third and fourth bullet points, what they say is this: the Oxyvision vital signs provides pulse rate and breathing rate measurements to a clinically validated accuracy and is also not intended to be relied upon as the sole basis for clinical decision making. And this adds, the OxyHealth vital signs device is for spot check observations. It does not provide alerts for vital signs, for example, high or low pulse and or breathing rate. May I just ask a question arising from that? Why is vital signs not intended to be relied on as the sole basis for clinical decision making?
I mean, there's very few things that you would rely on as a sole basis for clinical decision making. As I said, I'm not a clinician, but each patient will be under the care of a responsible clinician, and that clinician will take into account many different factors in determining their care plan. And the point here, and the multidisciplinary team that supports that responsible clinician, and the point here is that this may be useful information, but it should not be the sole piece of information for decision making.
It's part of a bigger picture.
That's absolutely right.
But because a pulse and a breath rate will only get you so far.
That's right. Yeah.
So, if there was a problem with a patient, there are other things you'd like to do. For example, measure blood pressure.
It may well be the case. Yeah.
Thank you. Can I ask you this? What do staff actually do with the information that Vital Signs provides, other than have the system log it?
So one of the things where this has been useful, which I've been told about by staff, is, for example, it's helped to identify sleep apnea because the trend has allowed staff to identify there's a physical health trend here that is not what we'd normally expect. So staff have used this this reporting as an input into multidisciplinary and team reviews of patients, etc.
I suppose the point that I'm really making is this: what vital signs it's providing is pretty limited, isn't it?
I mean, as with all inputs to decision making, it has limitations to it. Yeah.
Just looking a little bit further down the page, we can see it says also the Oxyvision activity tracker is intended to display a warning and or set off a visual and audible alert if it detects activity in a room occupied by a sole occupant, having detected occupancy, and then it goes on to say this: the activity suggests that an occupant is in a specified region within the room, such as a doorway, or remains in that region for a specified length of time. The activity suggests that the occupant has entered a camera blind spot or an adjoining area out of the field of view, such as a bathroom, or remains in that area for a specified length of time. The activity suggests that the occupant is making movements associated with leaving the bed region or has got out of bed, having already detected occupancy within the bed region. The activity suggests that the occupant has left the room. The activity suggests that a second occupant has entered the room. Now, that's quite a wide range of alerts. Are these alerts, as far as you're aware, applicable across all e-put inpatient rooms, or will some depend on the type of ward or unit?
In each setting, there is a process with the relevant ward staff to make sure that all of the alerts that are applicable there are right. And I think, in particular, in seclusion rooms, there's a difference, but largely in the acute adult wards, then there's a similar deployment across.
Thank you. So this document refers to an alert if a patient is in their ensuite bathroom, and we've heard separately that this is triggered if they are there for more than 3 minutes. Is that correct?
Yes.
Isn't it common that someone will be in the bathroom for more than 3 minutes, and won't that lead to a large number of alarms?
It's not uncommon. Bathrooms are a known risk area. It doesn't mean that, and this is something that's really important in our policy, staff members to follow that policy must then attend. They may call out to a patient within a room. It will be their professional judgment to make sure that they have assured themselves of the safety of that patient.
Can we go to the next page, please, and please expand the second bullet point. Thank you. This is just on Oxyvision observations, Mr. Trent. We can see here, Oxyvision observations is intended for digitally recording the results of non-intrusive patient observations in situations where regular checks of patient location, presentation, and breathing status are required, normally referred to as level 1 and level 2 observations, and they are referred to also as general observations or intermittent observations. The observations product is for digitally recording patient observations and does not have any medical diagnosis or monitoring capability. Now, first of all, are there different levels of observation within e-put?
Yes, 4 levels.
And so they include level 1 general observations, which is the minimum level, is that correct?
Yes, it's set out in detail in the observation and engagement policy.
Thank you. In terms of level 1, are you aware that that involves knowing the patient's location, but without the need to keep them in sight? Does that sound right? And as we've seen, there are then the enhanced observation levels from 2 to 4, yes?
Correct.
And is the minimum of the enhanced levels, level 2, intermittent observations, where it's necessary to check the patient a minimum of 4 times an hour?
Yes, and it's important to understand with that, it may be more than 4 times an hour, and it should be not predictable. The point is that if you were doing that exactly every 15 minutes, you wouldn't be following the policy. The policy is that there should be some variation in it, but a minimum of 4. And of course, colleagues do use professional judgment where they might have a reason for concern to do an additional observation. That would be absolutely in line with the policy.
Now, these are observations that would previously, before the deployment of the technology, have been conducted by a member of staff visibly checking on the ward. Is that correct?
Yes, but the deployment of the technology doesn't change that. The expectation in our policies is that staff will still make a direct observation and engagement, but they may use the system to assist them in doing so.
Can we unpick that? Are
Certainly.
you saying that effectively all that is happening is that in-person observations continue in exactly the same way, and they're just being logged on the tablet? Or are you saying that the observations are, in part at least, being conducted remotely through the monitor in the nurse's station or through a tablet?
Observations should not be conducted remotely. That's not what our policies say. When a member of staff is undertaking engagement, and the engagement part, as other colleagues, as other witnesses have said, is really important in the policy. People should be doing that where they are able to see the patient and be assured. The Oxyvision system, that's why we describe it as an assistive system, is to assist them in taking that observation at those times. But the primary observations and engagement should be done in person.
So let's just be absolutely clear about your evidence, please. We've got a vital signs function that allows members of staff remotely to take pulse and breathing rates. But that facility, the vital signs facility, should not be used to conduct observations for other reasons.
No, I mean, that's absolutely right. The technology here is to assist staff in carrying out engagement and observations in line with the engagement observation policy. It's not for another purpose.
I'm not sure you've quite answered that
Sorry,
question. So if we distinguish between observations, which are prescribed by a care plan, for instance,
Yes.
For engagement with the patient, you're expecting that to be done face-to-face.
Yes.
And the observation under the vital signs is only to be used for the vital signs observation.
So the vital sign can be taken as part of the observation engagement with a patient. So if there was a level 2 observation and staff were going to see that patient 4 or more times, then they might use the system to take a vital sign at the same time. I think the particular value of the vital signs is, even at night time, if somebody was sleeping, staff under the policy should go to the room. They may not, they may be able to be professionally assured by visibly seeing the patient and taking the observation with the system. It would not be acceptable for them to have done that in the nurse's office and say that was a complete observation.
Thank you. I think we've got that.
Can we deal with nighttime, just so that we are really clear about your evidence? We heard yesterday that one of the great advantages of Oxyvision is that it allows observations to be taken, for example, during the night without disturbing the patient. Now, if I've understood your evidence correctly, even during the night, Oxyvision should not be used to conduct remote observations other than when there's a need to take vital signs.
That's correct. So to conduct an observation in line with the policy at night time, a member of staff should go, if the patient was asleep in their bedroom, should go to that bedroom door. They may use professional judgment on whether they've looked through the door or they've gone in, but they should be professionally assured that that patient is safe and well. And they can use the system to take a vital sign to assist them. And so if I give, I was talking to our trust-wide quality matron for Oxyvision about this matter the other day. And she said, you know, I would be looking to see the rise and fall of the patient's chest to be professionally assured, and the vital sign could assist me in having that assurance.
Thank you. When Oxyvision is used for observations purposes, when when we're using the vital signs function of Oxyvision, we heard yesterday that staff are accessing up to 15 seconds of clear view data using that function. And do you agree with that?
Yes.
And we heard reasons from Laura Cousins yesterday for that.
Yes.
And just one other thing, and we touched on this yesterday, but what was EPUT's role in the development of Oxyvision observations?
So we worked with Oxy Health to pilot that. One of the reasons for that was, as you know, we had an inadequate CQC rating on our CAM services, and one of the things the CQC were very concerned about was that there were gaps in the observation records. And one of the benefits of the Oxy Observations digital system is the ward managers can audit that in near real time. And so I've had conversations with the senior manager for CAMS, who since this has been implemented has said to me that I have spotted where a member of staff was not carrying out their observations, and I've done it in near real time and taken corrective action. With the paper records, we wouldn't have been able to do that kind of audit as quickly or easily. And
that's when you're using the tablet, for example, to input information of an observation.
That's right, and if I may say a little more on that, the tablet is assistive to the staff member. So if we take that 4 times plus an hour, if it's gone over 15 minutes since the last observation, it will nudge the staff member and say, you haven't completed another observation. So that does assist our staff in making sure they're taking timely observations. And then the further point, and I know this has come up in inquests and previous learnings, there's been concern about falsification of records. You cannot falsify the record using the observation record using the tablet. You can record a retrospective observation, so a staff member can go in and say, for whatever reason, and there may be legitimate reasons for that, they might have responded to an incident, or there may have been a problem with the tablet or whatever. I didn't record these observations at the time, but I have now, but those would then be noted as retrospective.
So the tablet will inform anyone interrogating the system, or the system will inform someone that these entries have come after the event.
Absolutely.
Thank
so
you.
that provides better ward level oversight of observation practice, and that was why we wanted to work with Oxy Health to develop it.
Thank you. And we heard yesterday from Laura Cousins that a live blurred view of the patient is available through the system when an alert has been triggered by the system, and available for up to 15 seconds. Is that correct at EPUT?
Yes.
And the Oxy Health Vital Signs process allows, as we've seen, a clinician to access a 15-second live clear video feed of the patient in their room before taking the vital signs measurement. Can we look at a recent EPUT document that covers this? Could you put up, please, EPUT 009884 at page 11? And expand the second half of the page. From there are just 2 conditions. Now, Mr. Trent, this is from the most recent standard operating procedure at EPUT in relation to Oxyvision. Can we see here, there are just 2 conditions where visual displays are available. And then the first bullet point says this: during an alert, a live 15-second anonymized blurred view is available. And then a little further down it says, remote viewing by camera does not negate the requirement for an in-person clinical assessment. Only when the in-person assessment is completed can an alert be reset? Now, is that what you were talking about a little earlier on?
Yes, absolutely. So, one of the concerns that I understand that people have around this system is that an alert, a warning or an alert may go off, and staff have reset that without being professionally assured that the person concerned is safe and well. And so our policy is clear that you should not be resetting an alert without actually going to see the patient and being professionally assured that you're safe and well, that they're safe and well.
Has that always been part of the policy since the first deployment of Oxyvision, or is that a recent development?
I believe that's been part of the policy for some time. I would have to review the historical versions to be able to confirm that over the full period.
So we may come back to you about that after you've concluded your evidence. There may be further matters as well.
Certainly, I'm very happy to provide further evidence to the inquiry.
I could say this, having looked at the earliest SAP that I've been able to find from 2021, that contains a similar instruction.
Thank you.
Is there a requirement within Oxyvision or elsewhere for staff to confirm that they've conducted an in-person assessment?
Within the system, it's within the Oxyvision system.
Or anywhere?
I don't think there's a specific tick box. The system does have free text. Well, it has a couple of things. So when they're doing an observation, it will ask where the patient was, and so that will be pre-configured for a ward. So the person undertaking the observation might tap on they were in the communal living space or in the bedroom or wherever they were at that time. There'll also be an opportunity to talk about the patient's mental state and wellness, and again, options there. And there's a free text to describe anything else,
So
but not a specific, did you go and do this in person? However, what I would say with this is that, that's covered in the policy and the training. And, when we're talking about, and I think this is a really important matter when understanding technology in a healthcare context, there are multiple systems of control here. We expect staff to behave professionally according to their training, to their qualification and registration where applicable, and according to the trust policies. And we expect them to do that using any system to whatever level of further control there is built into the system.
We're going to come on to talk about auditing, for example, a little later on, and that might be an aspect of what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I want to now move to the advantages, as EPUT perceives them, to Oxyvision. I think you've touched on a couple already. You say in paragraph 10 of your first statement that Oxyvision has been introduced in EPUT, as we've heard, across selected inpatient wards, seclusion rooms, and health-based places of safety to enhance and improve patient care and safety in order to, and then you list a number of items, reduce the risk of self-harm, including ligatures, identify periods when patients may spend prolonged times in bathrooms and blind spots, reduce the risk of multiple people in a room at one time, provide patient-centric reporting to support patient care planning, and enhance a preventative awareness for patient risk associated to falls. And elsewhere you cover the availability of data from Oxyvision, including following an incident, and we may come on to aspects of that. Are there any other key benefits to Oxyvision that you'd like to explain to us now?
I think those have covered the key points.
So moving to the use of data from Oxyvision. The data the system produces, can that be used for a variety of reasons?
Which data do you mean specifically?
Any of the data that Oxyvision produces, can that be harnessed for a variety of different reasons?
I mean, any use of data it must be for a purpose that's consistent with the way it was collected. So, I think that's forgive me, that's why I asked about which specific element
Well,
of
should we
the
come
data.
on, rather than ask you a general question, should we come on and I'll ask you about specific aspects?
Yes, thank you.
Can we start with usage reports?
Yes.
We heard yesterday from Laura Cousins about these, and I'd like to ask you some questions about them too, please. Is it right that these provide details of the use of Oxyvision at ePut?
Yes, it is.
And are they sent by Oxy Health to ePut at regular intervals?
Yes.
You refer to them in your first statement, this is paragraph 60, where you explain that they are provided to ward managers and matrons on a weekly and monthly basis for local monitoring and discussion with staff. What do you mean by local monitoring and discussion with staff?
So, I gave an example earlier of the scrutiny of observations and being able to, identify any gaps and so on. But equally, if there were any, if for example, we saw a particularly higher number of observations, and I appreciate having heard others witness evidence is an area of concern, that might be a matter that was then considered by the local ward management to understand, was there a legitimate reason for that? Of course, levels of acuity on wards will change. So if you had a ward with higher acuity, you'd expect to see more observations and more recordings. And of course, we've talked about, the inquiry has heard evidence about the circumstance in which an observation will complete or not with people moving around. So, a patient who is moving around a lot, you may have more failed attempts, etc. So those reports are shared in order that there can be local oversight of the system. It's a much more concise answer.
That's helpful, thank you. Just to pick up on something you said, in case people didn't hear everything that you said, did you say that if, for example, you referred to a particularly higher number of observations, and then I think what you said was that might be a matter that would be escalated to by the local ward management? Is that right?
Yes, because the project board on a monthly basis oversees these reports. If the project board had, on a trust-wide basis, if the project board had concerns, then the trust-wide quality matron will pick that up with local wards as well, and she does regular visits to the wards to discuss Oxyvision and how it's used.
Thank you very much. Let's look at an example of a usage report that you've provided to us from July 2024, and the report addresses all ward usage over the last month. Could you put up, please, ePut 009021 at page 30 and expand the top third of the page? So we looked at this yesterday with Laura Cousins, and can we see on the left the ward name, and then we see a column for vital signs attempts, and we established with Laura Cousins yesterday that means the number of times a member of staff has used the system to access up to 15 seconds of clear view video prior to making a vital signs check.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would agree with that, yeah.
And next to that, vitals displayed. Does that mean, Laura Cousins told us yesterday that means the number of successful attempts to take vital signs. Would you agree with that?
Yes, so giving a specific example of Cherry Down ward, there's 10,000 attempts and 4,200 displays, so 42% of those attempts resulted in a displayed or a completed process. And I mean, I was at Cherry Down last week visiting.
Thank you. We looked at this yesterday, and you may have seen, you've been there when we did, but the discrepancy that you have just identified between the number of attempts and the number of times that vitals are successfully displayed carries that on through all of the wards, as we saw when we scrolled down. Can we look at a different part of this, please? Could you go to the bottom of the page where we see the lakes in the left-hand column and read the Ardley ward statistics? So here we see that there have been 35,665 vital signs attempts and only 9,413 times were vitals successfully displayed. That reflects, I think you referred to a rate of about 40% before. This reflects a rate of about a quarter, where the attempt is successful. So that might be the largest discrepancy on the page, but would you agree that what this page shows, and that example in particular, is that it takes a lot of attempts successfully to get a proper vital signs reading?
That's likely to be a key part of the variance. I know other witnesses have highlighted a concern about whether this is being used inappropriately as well. I understand that. You can't tell from this data, just in this report alone, what has driven that discrepancy. So I can't be determinative and say it was because the patients were moving were moving in a way that the system couldn't accommodate, or there were multiple people in rooms. I can't tell that from this report. But the discrepancy, I accept.
Yeah. So we'll unpick that. There is the possibility of inappropriate use. We'll come back to that if we may. But first of all, do you accept that in principle, as this data shows, it takes a lot of attempts before vitals are successfully taken?
I mean, it can do. I think, as we've heard in evidence from OxyHealth, if you're taking a vital and the patient is lying in bed and their skin is visible, then it should work first time. If you were trying to take a vital sign and the patient was moving around or restless, for example, in their sleep, it may not work. So I can't say definitively it takes many attempts or it takes few, because it depends on each case.
Could we see the whole of this page again, please? What this shows us, at least from July 2024, is that this discrepancy exists in all of the wards.
Yes, it does.
So it's not specific to a particular kind of unit. If I've understood your evidence correctly, but please tell me if I've got this wrong, there is a theme that is identified here that it takes lots of attempts successfully to record vital signs.
Correct.
Is that a wider issue? So, for example, not confined to July 2024?
Yes, I believe so, yeah.
Thank you. You also mentioned the possibility of inappropriate use. Might these statistics suggest that staff are using the vital signs function effectively as a CCTV system by repeatedly accessing the 15-second clear view video function?
If I can differentiate for a moment between the definition of CCTV and whether staff are taking additional additional views, as it were, it is possible that staff have taken additional views over and above the what's prescribed in the policy, and it's precisely because of that risk that the latest policy and indeed the staff communications were absolutely explicit that any additional observation taken in that way must be documented in the record. So, as a trust, we're clear, and we've sought to reassert this with staff, that you should not be using the system to take additional observations in that way.
So just putting CCTV, the term, to one side, we heard yesterday from Laura Cousins that it is possible using this system repeatedly to press the button on the tablet to get a continued 15-second clear view feed.
You would have to repeat the workflow each time, so there might be a short pause in between each feed, because you'd have to click through some buttons. That is clearly an inappropriate use of the system. That is not what we would expect our staff to be doing. That's not what our policies say, and that would not be appropriate in terms of professional standards either. So when I referred earlier, to systems of control, and this applies, as I say, to all technologies that we use, while the system itself doesn't have a control to prevent that, we have other controls in terms of our policy and training and professional standards for staff, which would mean that we would not expect staff to be misusing the system to that effect.
So this is the second time that you said you wouldn't expect staff to act contrary to EPUT policy. But don't these figures, the ones on the screen here, raise the real possibility that the system is being misused?
I agree there is the possibility of that, and it's why we've taken actions to strengthen that. It's why there's oversight at the project board, and why these reports are then shared with wards. And, you know, as Paul Scott said in his position statement, the Trust is still working continuously to improve compliance with policies and procedures. And, you know, I know we'll talk later about, you know, how the implementation of the SOP is going, and I'll say more there about that.
But
when did you change the policy in relation to this specific issue of misuse of observations?
So that was in version 12, the one that was released on the 7th of May, where we specifically, I mean, it would have been contrary to our policies prior to that, but we made it explicit that that was not an appropriate use, and we further highlighted that in all staff communications. Prior to that, it would still have been inconsistent with our policies, but we hadn't called it out explicitly in the document.
And have you done any work to try and ascertain what this discrepancy is actually down to on any particular ward?
I know that the quality matron has visited those wards, and the project board has been looking at it. I don't know whether there's been a further detailed analysis, but it's something certainly, Chair, that we could come back to you on.
Can we stay with the Ardley ward and look at another aspect of this usage report, please? Could you put up EPUT 009021 at page 24 and expand part 1 at the top? Good, yeah, perfect. Now this shows the number of vital sign attempts made on the ward on each day of the month. So we can see the days of the month from 1 to 31 along the bottom. And we can see that the figures fluctuate, but can we see that, for example, on the 28th of June, there were 2,219 attempts, and 1,676 of those were made during the day and the others overnight. We can tell that from the different colours on the bar chart. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, Ardley ward is a female acute ward, is that correct?
Yes.
And it has 18 beds, correct?
Yes.
And this document tells us elsewhere that daytime is defined as from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
So what do you think is going on there? A number of attempts, 2,219, with 1,676 of those being made during the day. Do you agree that it seems high?
It's certainly the modal point in that month being the highest number in that month. I don't know from this report what's happened on that particular day in that particular ward. And I mean, that's exactly why these reports are reviewed and shared, so that, you know, changes in the trend can be reviewed. But I couldn't speculate here on the precise reasons for that.
Could you expand part 2 in the middle of this page, please? So this section covers how many alerts have you had and how quickly are they reset over the last month? And we can see that there are different categories. So at the shortest, between 0 and 15 seconds, then between 16 seconds and 2 minutes, and then over 2 minutes. And we can see again analysis over each separate day during the month. And in fact, the number of alerts on the ward fluctuate, as one might expect, but they range from 159, that's day 26, to 269 on day 9. We can see that on all days, the clear majority of alerts were reset in 15 seconds or less. Again, the figures vary day by day, ranging from 59% on day 6 to 86% on day 16. So those are cases where the reset was in 15 seconds or less. Would that suggest that staff members are often not conducting in-person checks of patients following an alert?
There could be multiple reasons for that. So, for example, staff members are not confined to the ward office. They will be out and about on the ward. And so if an alert goes off at a point where they are close to a patient, they may reset it quickly. Equally, if they have just done a check on a patient, for example, then they might be professionally assured that the alert, that they've dealt with the risk the alert was alerting to. So there are multiple reasons that a staff member may appropriately reset an alarm quickly. However, it's also possible that staff have reset that prior to undertaking the professional observation and assurance, which is the wrong way around, according to our policy. And again, this is exactly why this data is valuable, why it's overseen at the project board and shared with the wards.
But another reading of the data is that they're not conducting in-person checks. Would you agree with that?
It's possible that that is part of the data, but this data is one point of evidence, and it's why we undertake audits and visits and other practice as well. So, as you say, it can point you in a certain direction for further investigation.
Finally on this, we can see a number of instances where it's taken over 2 minutes before an alert is reset. So, for example, we can see that on day 1, it happened 236 times. What would be the possible reasons for such delays?
There's plenty of legitimate reasons for that. If somebody was in crisis, the first priority is to support that person in that moment of crisis, not to reset the alarm. If somebody went to engage and observe a patient and needed, clinically to support that patient in some way, that may well take longer than 2 minutes.
Another way of looking at it, though, would you agree, is that it's taking staff too long to conduct a check?
Well, again, I think that depends on the circumstances. So, yes, if staff were taking too long, in the sense that they didn't actually attend to the patient for over 2 minutes, that would be taking too long. If they didn't reset the alarm because we've said you must attend to the patient first, then that would be appropriate behaviour. And this is the kind of thing, again, that the nurse in charge and the ward manager and matrons will be concerned with about conduct on their wards.
Thank you. Would you take that down, please? We heard yesterday from Laura Cousins about vital signs trends data. In short, we learned that in addition to the manual vital signs checks conducted by staff using the system, Oxyvision also attempts automatically to collect vital signs in the background. Is that a facility also at EPUT?
Yes, I believe so.
This is then used as part of a report showing a summary of average vital signs data, correct?
Yes.
I'm going to move on to the use of data in serious incidents. Shall I move? I'll keep going for another 5 minutes or so. The use of Oxyvision data in serious incidents, please. I think we've established that the system is able to assist or at least provide some data in those circumstances. Is that right?
Yes.
And we heard yesterday from Laura Cousins that this data includes both video data and other incident data such as reports.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Could we deal with one aspect of that, please? You explain in your first statement that it's possible after an incident for OxyHealth remotely to extract clear video data from the Oxyvision server and provide it to a designated recipient at ePut. Yes?
Yes.
You add that clear video data must be requested by a member of staff within 24 hours of an incident, otherwise data is automatically overwritten. And you add the Oxyvision system runs on a, and these are the words you use, 24-hour rolling buffer, meaning that the footage overwrites, i.e. automatically deletes itself every 24 hours, and the clear video data becomes irrecoverable. You say that information, once it has been extracted within that 24-hour period, is retained until its purpose is exhausted, for example, once a coroner's process has concluded. Now, is that all correct?
Yes, but of course we have the moratorium, so we from the inquiry on the deletion of evidence, so we are not deleting any of those records in the way that's just described.
So absent a statutory public inquiry, would that have been correct?
Yes, that's absolutely right, yeah.
Is there a mechanism or protocol in place for automatically requesting clear video data within 24 hours following an incident?
Yes, in the incident management policy, it sets out that you should request. That's one of the actions that responsible colleagues should undertake during the immediate circumstances after a serious incident.
Thank you. That does take us to just before past. Chair, may I ask that we rise now and return at 2:15? So 45 minutes rather than 1 hour. Thank you.
Yes.